Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy. You're joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment, and our guest is Ray Zinn, Silicon Valley's longest-serving CEO, as well as the author of Tough Things First. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Well, thanks, Bob. Appreciate allowing me to join you and Stacy.
So I am going to give some more detailed background on Ray. He has a pretty impressive background. He is an inventor, entrepreneur, and, as you said, the longest-serving CEO of a publicly traded company in Silicon Valley. In 2015, he authored Tough Things First to share his leadership, company culture, and other perspectives on building enduring companies. He's known best for conceptualizing and, in effect, inventing the wafer stepper and for co-founding semiconductor company Micrel, which provides essential components for smartphones, consumer electronics, and enterprise networks. He has served as CEO, chairman of its board of directors, and president since the company was founded in 1978. Ray holds over 20 patents for semiconductor design. He's been mentioned in all kinds of books, including Jim Fixx's The Complete Book of Running and Essentialism by Greg McKeown. So first, tell us, how can entrepreneurs, including real estate people, know that they are indeed tackling the tough things first in their businesses? How do they know what the tough things are?
Well, anything that they regret doing or don't want to do, they hold off and procrastinate. So you can tell if you're a procrastinator if you say, well, I'll get to that later, or I'll work on that at some other time. And so we tend to put off the things that we don't want to do to some future time. So if you are in that situation, then you are a procrastinator or a person who puts off the tough things.
Yeah, that's me. So you're speaking to me. I keep putting off the hard stuff.
Well, you do a lot of the hard stuff. You just have a lot of hard stuff to tackle.
I know. But I always put it, I keep saying every year my New Year's resolution is I'm going to do that stuff first, but it still ends up at the bottom of my to-do list.
It's only December, the end of December. You still got a few weeks left, right?
Yeah,
or a week.
And now I just have to read this book because Ray's going to tell me how to do the tough things first. So how do I start doing the hard things or tough things first?
Well, what I do is I get up at a set time. I get up at 5:30 a.m. every morning, and I immediately exercise, which is something I don't necessarily want to do. And so, well, getting up at 5:30 is tough also. And so I get up early, I start exercising, and I just do that regularly with the regiment. And I define discipline as doing what you don't like doing and doing it well. So
Right.
I've just grown to learn to love to do the things I hate doing. And now if I pass up getting up early or pass up exercising, I feel guilty.
Right.
And I know that here we got the new year coming up here shortly, and we will say, okay, I'm going to put up one of my New Year's resolutions. I'm going to do the tough things first. Well, the first thing we do is postpone that until, well, maybe I'll start that in April or something. So, you just have to be committed to saying, I'm going to learn to love the things I hate doing. And once you start, it's like Emerson said, that which you persist in doing becomes easier. Not that the nature of the task becomes easier, but your ability to perform it is better.
Right.
And so that's the key.
Like, do you think you're like that? Because I'm just reading your Wikipedia page, and it talked about your early, like, how your mom basically had you work, like, doing work at 4 or 5 years old, and as you got older, you were helping all of your siblings and stuff like that. Like, do you think that's something that is instilled in people, or do you think anybody can learn to do the tough things first?
I think anyone can. It just so happens that I started at a very early age learning to do the tough things first, and so maybe that's an advantage, but it doesn't mean you can't start. It's like anything else. Begin. The rest is easy. So you have to begin at some point, whether it's tomorrow or sometime in the future. You're going to have to start if you want to succeed. So there's an old saying that not a saying, it's a advertisement. It says, "How do you spell relief?" ROLAIDS. That relates.
Right.
So what I say is, how do you spell success? W-O-R-K, not work, but work.
Right.
So it's this expanding ability to accomplish more, whether it be running a marathon, whether it be trying to, and in real estate, as a matter of fact, which is an interesting vocation, is that you don't have anybody looking over your shoulder. You have to get up in the morning. You got to hit it, and if you don't hit it hard and hit it consistently, you're not going to succeed in real estate.
Right.
And it's not like going, punching in a clock at 8 o'clock in the morning and then punching out at 5. You really have to get yourself on that critical path of performing certain functions in your job every day.
Right.
If you're going to be successful as a real estate agent, or for that matter, any job as an entrepreneur.
Right. So I was reading about you, and it said that when you were younger, your dream was to be an astronaut. So how did you end up in the semiconductor business? Okay,
good point. So when I graduated from school, got my degree, I took a job with United Technology and was one of the designers of the solid-state rocket booster, with the same one that they fly the shuttle with. Mm-hmm. And so I was always enthralled with space, and I wanted to be an astronaut because I love flying, and I ultimately became a pilot. Mm-hmm. But I just had this desire to go out in space and do space exploration. That's what got me into designing rocket motors. Hmm. But then my wife's father worked at Fairchild, a startup company, back in 1957, mm-hmm. And so he said, "Hey, you got to come over and join this new upcoming industry, semiconductors." And of course, back in those days we were using vacuum tubes, but I decided to take a look at it and liked the idea of the technology associated with semiconductors, and so I joined Fairchild in 1963 and stayed in the industry until just recently when I sold my company.
So I know you recently retired. Reading your background and just talking to you, you don't strike me as the type of person that relaxes. So what do you do now that you are retired?
Well, this is going to surprise your listeners, mm-hmm. but every morning after exercising, I get up and shave and get all ready to go. Eat a good breakfast, mm-hmm. and then I dress like I'm going to work. Mm-hmm. Even though I don't leave my house, I put on a nice pair of slacks and mm-hmm. a dress shirt and nice shoes, and I sit down and just like anybody else that doesn't have a boss looking over his shoulders, I have to figure out how do I want to spend my day.
Right.
And I start writing in my blog. I write articles. Mm-hmm. I answer questions for people, and I do some lecturing at these universities. In fact, I'm involved in about 4 or 5 universities now, where I actually mentor some students.
Yeah.
And I just keep myself busy, not doing busy work, but actually doing something to help other people. So I focus on what can I do to help other people.
So what type of stuff, where can people read your blog, and what are you blogging about?
Okay, so my blog is toughthingsfirst.com.
Yeah.
Which goes along with the name of the book.
Yeah.
And so they can read. I post there regularly. I have another on Facebook. I have Ray Zinn Entrepreneur, mm-hmm. Which I post things on that. I'm on LinkedIn. Okay. I'm on Twitter, and okay. Of course you can read the book. You'll get the book and read it. You can email me through toughthingsfirst.com if you have a question and want to know about a certain thing. Maybe it's how to retain employees, or maybe it's how do I get myself doing the tough things first. You can send me questions, mm-hmm. and I'll respond back. So that's how you can reach me, and that's how I can help you.
So I'm interested in, I believe you have a contrarian view of Silicon Valley, venture capital, and onshoring. Tell us what your contrarian view is.
Well, I don't want to be too contrarian about it. I think the venture capitalists have a role to play. It's just that I wanted to own my own company. I didn't want someone else to own it.
Yep.
And so I took the contrarian view that I had to raise money in a very different way, which was to go get bank financing. But banks don't like to loan to startups.
Yes.
So I had to convince the bank that that loaning to startups is not a bad thing.
Right.
And that was not an easy task to do.
Right.
That was extremely difficult because the banks wanted me to be profitable from day one.
Yes.
So how do you start a company and be profitable from day one? That means you have to change your business plan such that you have a business proposal that shows that you can be profitable on an annual basis.
Right.
And so once I agreed to do that, the bank was willing to loan me $300,000, which I then combined with the $300,000 that I put in for a total of $600,000. That gave me enough working capital that I could then run the business and be profitable. But I had to change the concept of the business to be a profitable business as opposed to just growing revenue like the VCs want you to do.
Right.
So that's the contrarian view, is that I had to run a profitable business from day one and not just a business to grow revenue.
Right.
As you know, many of the guys in my area, companies like Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and Google, they didn't make money in the beginning. They lost lots of money. In fact, I think Amazon still loses money.
Right. That is so interesting. So in growing your company, you started off small. How big did Micrel grow to?
We got to about $250 million in revenue when I sold the company.
And how many employees?
We had about 900.
Wow.
A lot of employees.
900 employees. That's unbelievable. What was your biggest challenge in building the business, and how did you overcome it?
Well, like any other business, it's how do you stay profitable? So what I recommend to startup entrepreneurs is don't start your company until you've raised enough money to take you to at least break even. Mm-hmm. That's the mistake that most entrepreneurs make, is they start their company with a little amount of money. They have to keep raising round after round after round after round, and then pretty soon they're diluted to nothing, and they lose interest because they don't have any ownership in it. So my recommendation is raise enough money in the beginning before you even start. Open door one. Don't start until you have enough money to take you to break even, with a little cushion too, like 10 or 15% over what you think you're going to need.
It's so interesting because I do agree with you that banks don't lend money unless you don't need their money.
Exactly
Also,
right.
with venture capital, for the companies I see that have raised round after round, is that the talent of the business, the CEOs, for example, they're spending so much time pitching to investors that they're not actually doing the core functions of growing the business.
And Stacy, that's exactly why 9 out of 10 startups fail within 3 years. That's exactly the reason.
Interesting. So find a way to bootstrap it, or find other sources of capital, or do like you did and understand that it's not going to be easy to get bank financing, but if you can put together a business proposal, you might be able to convince them to give you a business loan.
I did that. I mean, once I made a decision, I said, okay, I want to own the business. So that meant, of course, that I had to retain greater than 50%. I also wanted it to be an entrepreneurial kind of business, meaning every person that worked for me, I wanted them to feel like an entrepreneur, like they were involved in the business. That helped me retain them because now they felt connected. Because I said, you're going to be an owner with me of this business.
Right.
And I shared that with them in the very beginning. And they bought into the vision. They loved the concept of being part of a startup that was not losing money. They liked the fact that the company was making money. They felt more secure. And I focused on people. I made it a people-centric business, and they bought into that. And I had the lowest turnover of any company in my industry.
Wow. So when you say it's a people-centric business, how were you motivating employees beyond salary? Like, what was the offering to your employees?
Well, just like I've been married 55 years, and so it's like I treat my wife. I tell her how much I love her, and I do it every day. And I tell my people the same way. I go in and tell how much I really appreciate them and how much I really depend on them every single day. So I get out of my office and I walk around and I go up to my people and I chat with them and say, how's your daughter doing today, or how's your kids doing in school, and I just show interest in them as a person. So Stacy, if you think about you feel better about your friends because they're interested in you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes them a friend.
Right.
Is when they're interested in you as a person. That's a friend. And so I became a friend to my employees.
Awesome. So simple, but
Yeah.
true.
But how do you do that with 900 people?
I know, seriously.
Well, you may not be able to touch everybody every day, but they get that feeling. It's a feeling that you spread. Just like I've got 10 brothers and sisters, and I don't see them regularly because they're spread all over the country. But they know that I love them because I write to them, or I send them an email, or I send them a text. I just try to make a connection with them on a regular basis so they know that I do love them and appreciate them. So while I may not be able to sit down personally with them, just the fact that I reach out and touch them either through a twit or a text or some way, or a birthday card.
Right.
You can make connections. You don't have to, go on and touch 900 people. By the way, Micrell was a worldwide company, and we had them all over the world. And I got an email from just recently, as a matter of fact, from one of my employees from India that said, "Oh, I sure wished you were still here. We had such a great feeling when you were running the company." And I've never personally ever sat down with him because he's in India.
Right.
But yet he felt connected, and he felt good enough just to write me even recently. Of course, it was through LinkedIn, but still made connection.
Right. Wow, that's awesome.
That is great.
All right, so we are just about out of time. Where can people learn more about you and buy your book?
Well, my book is available on all the major sites, but primarily Amazon.
Okay.
You can get it on that through that mechanism. Of course, you can log on to my website, toughthingsfirst.com, and or contact me on Ray Zinn Entrepreneur on Facebook.
Okay.
On LinkedIn. So that's the best way to really reach me, Stacy and Bob.
Excellent.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
And this is Ray Zinn, and he is the author of Tough Things First. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ray.
Hey, this has been my pleasure.
That's going to do it for this edition of Get Real. Tune in again next weekend for more.